Welcome. Tonight's story comes from the darkest corners of Reddit. So turn down the lights, get comfortable, and let's step beyond the unknown. My grandmother left me her house. She didn't tell me about the basement. I wish I had never opened that door. Let me start by saying that my grandmother, Alina, was the kindest person I have ever known. She was the woman who volunteered at the local food bank until she was 82, who sent me handwritten letters every single week for 15 years, who never missed a birthday or a holiday. She was the woman who taught me how to bake her famous apple pie, how to identify birds by their songs, and how to sew a button back on a shirt. She was gentle, soft-spoken, and deeply religious in that quiet, unassuming way that small-town women of her generation often were. She went to church every Sunday, sat in the third pew from the front, and sang hymns in a voice so delicate it barely carried past her own lips. So when I inherited her house, I thought it was a gift, a final, loving gesture from a woman who had always taken care of me. I was 27, living in a cramped studio apartment in the city, drowning in student loan debt and the soul-crushing monotony of a job I hated. The house was my escape hatch, a fresh start, a chance to sell a piece of history and finally get ahead. I was so wrong. The house sits on 12 acres of land, about 40 miles outside of Millbrook, a town so small it doesn't even have its own traffic light. The property has been in our family for over 100 years. My great-grandfather built the original structure, and my grandfather added onto it in the 1950s. It's a rambling, two-story farmhouse with peeling white paint, wraparound porch that sags in the middle, and a tin roof that sings when it rains. It's the kind of house that looks beautiful in photographs, but feels heavy when you're standing inside it, like the walls are holding their breath. I arrived on a Friday afternoon in late October. The leaves had turned, painting the property in shades of burnt orange and crimson. A cold wind rattled the bare branches of the old oak tree in the front yard, and the porch swing was swaying back and forth, even though there was no one sitting on it. I remember thinking it was a little strange, but I dismissed it as just the wind. I was tired from the 2-hour drive. My back ached from sitting in the car, and all I wanted was to get inside, make a cup of tea, and figure out where to even begin. The key turned in the lock with a satisfying click, and I pushed the door open. The smell hit me immediately, that unmistakable scent of an old house that's been closed up for too long. Dust, mothballs, aged wood, and something else. Something faintly sweet, like dried flowers, that I couldn't quite place. The living room was a time capsule of my grandmother's life. Floral-patterned couch that had been there as long as I could remember. Doilies on every available surface. A grandfather clock that hadn't ticked in decades, and shelves upon shelves of knickknacks and porcelain. Figurines. Her knitting basket sat in the corner, a half-finished scarf, still on the needles, the yarn dusty and discolored. It felt like she had just stepped out for a moment and would be back any second. I set my bag down and walked through the house, flipping on lights, opening windows to let in the fresh air. The kitchen was the same as I remembered, yellow linoleum floors, a big farmhouse sink, and that old cast-iron stove she'd cooked on for 50 years. The dining room had a heavy oak table with 8 chairs, all neatly pushed in. Upstairs, there were 3 bedrooms. Her room, with the four-poster bed where she'd eventually passed away in her sleep, a guest room, and my room, which she'd always kept exactly the way I'd left it as a child, with the same race car bedspread and the same faded baseball posters on the wall. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed safe. I spent the next day and a half methodically sorting through the house. I started in the living room, sorting piles into keep, donate, and trash. It was tedious, but there was a strange comfort in it. I found old love letters my grandfather had written to her during the war, yellowed and brittle with age. I found my mother's baby pictures, her first report card, her graduation announcement. I found birthday cards I'd made her as a child, adorned with crayon, drawings, and misspelled declarations of love. It was Saturday afternoon, around 4:00 p.m., when I finally turned my attention to the basement door. The door was at the end of the hallway, hidden behind an old coat rack that I'd assumed was just part of the clutter. But when I moved the coat rack aside, I saw it clearly for the first time in my adult life. It was a heavy, solid door made of dark oak, with an iron latch that had rusted over the years. It was covered in dust, but I could see the faint outlines of carvings in the wood, symbols that I couldn't quite make out. Circles within circles, lines that seemed to twist into themselves. Strange geometric patterns that made my head hurt if I looked at them too long. I remembered this door from my childhood. My grandmother always kept it locked. When I was small, I'd asked her what was down there, and she just smiled her warm, crinkly-eyed smile and said, "Old junk, honey. Nothing for a little one to worry about." I'd accepted that answer without question, the way children do, out of sight, out of mind. But now I was an adult. The house was mine, and I needed to know what was in the basement before I could sell it. Buyers would have questions. Inspectors would need access. I couldn't just pretend it didn't exist. I fumbled through the keyring the lawyer had given me. There were dozens of keys, most of them rusted and unlabeled. I tried one. It didn't fit. Another. Still no. I was about to give up when I saw it. A small, tarnished brass key that seemed to glow faintly in the dim hallway light. I don't know why I noticed it. It was no different from any of the others, but something about it drew my attention. I picked it up, my fingers tingling slightly at the contact, and inserted it into the lock. It fit perfectly. I turned the key, and I heard the lock disengage with a heavy, resonant clunk that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards beneath my feet. A wave of cold air rushed through the crack in the door, carrying with it that metallic, sweet smell I'd noticed earlier. It was stronger now, almost cloying. It smelled like old pennies and rotten honey. I pulled the door open, revealing a steep, narrow staircase that descended into darkness. The steps were made of rough-hewn wood, warped and splintered with age. There was no railing. The walls were stone, slick with moisture, and covered in patches of dark, fuzzy mold. The air was so cold it made my breath mist, even though the rest of the house was comfortably warm. I flicked the light switch at the top of the stairs. Nothing happened. The bulb was probably dead. Or maybe there was no bulb at all. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam of light cut through the darkness like a blade, illuminating the first few steps before being swallowed by the shadows below. I took a deep breath and started down. The wood groaned under my weight with every step, protesting my intrusion into the depths. The walls grew narrower as I descended, the ceiling lower. The smell grew stronger, thick and suffocating, coating the back of my throat like syrup. I had to resist the urge to gag. The stairs seemed to go on forever, far longer than any basement staircase should. I counted 15 steps, 20, 30. I'd been walking down for almost a full minute, which was impossible. The house wasn't that big. It couldn't have a basement this deep. Finally, the stairs ended. My feet touched solid ground dirt, packed hard over the years, mixed with gravel and small stones. I swept my phone's light across the room. It was hung. The room was large, much larger than the footprint of the house above. The ceiling was high, vaulted, and made of stone. The walls were covered in the same strange carvings I'd seen on the door upstairs, but here they were everywhere. Thousands of them, dense and overlapping, covering every inch of the stone. Some were simple, almost childlike, depicting stick figures with too many limbs. Others were intricate and geometric, spiraling into infinity in ways that made my eyes water. And some were worse, figures with faces where their stomachs should be, shapes that seemed to shift and move when I looked at them out of the corner of my eye. But the worst part was this: the door in the far corner of the room, half hidden behind a tarp that had rotted away in places, was a door, a small metal door, the size of a child's bedroom door, set flush into the stone wall. It was made of a metal I couldn't identify, dull gray, with patches of greenish corrosion. It was covered in the same symbols as the walls, but these were different, angrier, jagged lines that looked like they'd been gouged into the metal by someone in a frenzy. And in the center of the door was a symbol that made my blood run cold. It was a circle, but within it were 3 interlocking spirals, each one ending in what looked like a claw. I walked towards it, my footsteps echoing in the vast, silent space. The air grew colder with every step until I could see my own breath fogging up in front of me. The metallic smell was overwhelming now, and underneath it, I could detect something else, something that smelled like death, like rot and decay, and all the things that should never see the light of day. I reached out my hand to touch the door. The moment my fingertips brushed the cold metal, I heard it, a sound from the other side, soft at first, almost imperceptible, rhythmic, wet scratching, like nails scraping against a chalkboard, but muffled. It was coming from inside the room, behind the door. I jerked my hand back, my heart hammering against my ribs. The scratching stopped. Then a voice, my grandmother's voice. "You shouldn't have come down here, sweetheart." I froze. My blood turned to ice in my veins. That was her. That was exactly her voice, her gentle, loving tone, the way she used to call me sweetheart when I was a child. It was coming from the other side of the door. It was coming from inside that metal box. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. I was supposed to seal it forever. I thought I had, but I got old and I got tired, and I thought if I just didn't go down here anymore, it would be okay. It would just go away." The scratching started again, louder this time, more frantic. The door vibrated slightly, and I could see it bowing, outward just barely, as if something on the other side was pressing against it. The symbol in the center seemed to writhe, the spirals, twisting and turning like living things. "It's been waiting, sweetheart. It's been so patient. It knows you're here. It can smell you. I wanted to run. Every instinct I had was screaming at me. Get out of the house. Never look back. But my legs wouldn't move. I was frozen, my phone light trembling in my hand, illuminating that terrible door. The voice continued, and it was no longer gentle. It had shifted, become something deeper, something that resonated in the very core of my being. Open the door, dear. It's been so long, so hungry. It needs to feed. It needs to come out. The scratching turned into scraping. The metal began to groan. A low, tortured sound like a whale dying under. The ocean, the symbol in the center of the door, started to glow, a faint, pulsing, red like the embers of a dying fire. It was seeping light, bleeding it, dripping it down the metal like blood. The temperature dropped so fast, I could feel the cold penetrating my bones, making my joints ache. I could see my own breath misting in front of me, thick and white. And then a new sound, low, guttural growl, so deep it seemed to come from the very earth. Beneath my feet, it vibrated through the dirt floor, through the walls, through my skull. It was a sound that spoke of hunger, of rage, of something that had been imprisoned for far too long and was desperate to be free. The growl built in intensity, rising to a crescendo, and it was punctuated by the sound of something on the other side of the door, screaming, not a human scream, something worse, something that had no right to exist. It was a sound that I can't describe, that I can't even remember properly without the memory feeling like a violation. It was the sound of pain and fury and malice all rolled into one, and it was coming from behind that door. I finally found my voice. I let out a scream, raw, primal, terrified, and I turned and ran. I ran for the stairs, my feet slipping on the dirt floor, my heart pounding in my ears. I grabbed the handrail and pulled myself up, taking the steps 2, 3 at a time. The wood groaned and splintered under my frantic weight, but I did. I just needed to get out. I needed to get above ground, away from that thing, away from that door. The stairs seemed even longer on the way up. I was climbing and climbing, my legs burning, my lungs screaming for air, and still I didn't reach the top. The darkness pressed in around me, suffocating, the only light the dim glow of my phone. The sounds from below echoed up the staircase, the scratching, the growling, the screaming. It was all getting louder. I finally burst through the basement door and slammed it shut behind me. I fumbled with the lock, my fingers numb and clumsy, and finally managed to turn the key. The lock engaged with a heavy thunk, and I stumbled backward, breathing heavily, my whole body shaking. I could still hear it, even through the thick oak door, the scratching, the growling, and my grandmother's voice calling out to me. It won't hold, sweetheart. It's been too long. It's too strong now. You have to let it out. It's the only way. If you don't, it'll just keep growing. It'll keep breaking down the walls, piece by piece. It's been doing it for years. That's why I carved those symbols. That's why I kept it locked. But I'm gone now, and it's almost free. I didn't stay to listen. I ran out of the house, grabbing my car keys on the way. I didn't bother to lock the front door. I didn't care. I just needed to get away. I started my car and drove, and I didn't stop driving until I was 20 miles away, sitting in a motel room, the door locked, the lights on, and a chair propped against the door handle. That was 3 days ago. I haven't gone back to the house. I've been staying at this motel, living on fast food and coffee, barely, sleeping. Every time I close my eyes, I hear that voice. I hear the scratching. I hear the growling. It's like it's in my head now, a permanent fixture, a constant presence, lurking in the back of my mind. I've tried to do research. I've looked up the symbols I remember, tried to find anything that matches. I found a few things, references to ancient Celtic binding rituals, to Native American traditions of sealing evil spirits in iron, to something called a threshold prison that was supposedly used by the first settlers of this country. The symbols on the walls were meant to hold something in, to trap it, to starve it until it lost its power. But the symbols have to be renewed. They have to be maintained. And my grandmother was old. She couldn't keep them up anymore. She was just pretending that if she ignored the basement, the problem would go away. I called the lawyer. He told me he didn't know anything about the basement, that my grandmother had never mentioned it. I asked him if she'd ever told him anything strange, anything about the house being haunted, about not going into the basement. He laughed and said, Mrs. Abernathy was a sweet old lady, a bit eccentric maybe. She always said she wanted to be buried in the backyard, but I figured that was just old people talk, buried in the backyard. I hadn't thought of that. Why would she want to be buried in the backyard? I drove back to the house yesterday. I couldn't help it. I had to see. I parked at the end of the driveway and walked through the yard, my heart pounding. The ground was soft from recent rain, and I could see the faint outline of a depression near the old oak tree. A grave, a shallow, unmarked grave, the dirt sunken in like it had been dug years ago and never properly filled. I didn't dig. I was too afraid. But I know what's down there, or what used to be. I think my grandmother buried something in that grave, and I think that something is what's in the basement. I'm back in the motel room now. The scratching has stopped. Everything is quiet, but I can feel it, a presence in the back of my mind, a pressure against my consciousness, like a thumb pressing into my skull. It's getting closer. It's been following me, slowly but surely, ever since I opened that. Or, I don't know what to do. I can't go back to the house. I can't go near it. But I can't just leave it, can I? Whatever is in that basement is going to get out. My grandmother said it herself. It's almost free. And I think, somehow, that opening the door made it stronger. Let more of it leak out into the world. I've been hearing things in the motel. Soft footsteps in the hallway at night, stopping right outside my door. I look through the peephole, and there's no one there, but I can feel someone watching me. A cold draft comes through the locked door, and I hear the faintest whisper, "Let me in, sweetheart. I won't hurt you." It's her voice, my grandmother's voice, but it's not her. It's wearing her voice, wearing her memory like a mask to get close to me. It's tricking me, playing with me, the way a cat plays with a mouse before. The kill, I don't know how long I can last. I'm running out of money for the motel. I can't go home. I can't even think of going back to my apartment, because I know it would follow me there. It's bound to me now. It's attached itself to me, like a leech feeding on my fear. I'm writing this in the hope that someone will read it, that someone will know what to do. Maybe there's a ritual. Maybe there's a way to seal it again, to put it back in its prison. Maybe there's someone out there who's dealt with things like this before. The lights just flickered. The screen of my laptop dimmed for a second, then came back on. And in the reflection of the dark window, I saw something behind me, a shadow, tall and thin and misshapen, with too many limbs, and a face that wasn't a face. That was just a void, an emptiness that swallowed the light around it. I turned around, and it was gone. But the door to the motel room is now unlocked. I didn't unlock it. The chair I propped against the handle is on the floor, as if it was brushed aside with a single, effortless motion. I can hear it breathing, softly, rhythmically, from just outside the door, waiting. Patience is all it knows, after all. It's been waiting for years. It can wait a little longer. I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. I think this might be the last thing I ever write. If you find this, if you read this, please be careful. Please don't go into the basement. Please don't unlock the door. And if you hear a voice calling to you, a familiar voice, a voice you love, don't listen. It's not them. It's never them. It's just hungry. If you enjoyed tonight's story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you'd like to hear more. Until then, lock your doors, keep the lights on, and remember, not every story is just a story. Get some rest if you can, and I'll see you next time. Same time, same place, beyond the unknown.